And we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome along. So, to tonight, which is episode 29, I think we're up to now.
Yeah.
We are really lucky to be joined by Kathy Ortiz, who is a Pedro Sauer Black Belt and founder of, or one of the co-founders of Agogi Academy. And yeah, it's great. We're just going to jump straight in, I think. How are you?
Great.
You okay?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So we usually kind of do a little bit of preamble, people know, before the podcast starts. So we do warn all our guests that we're going to ask them probably to repeat themselves because we kind of get into it before we get a chance to press play or whatever. So do you want to tell everybody, kind of maybe just introduce yourself a little bit and sort of tell them about how you got into Jiu-Jitsu and it's kind of a good start, I guess.
Sure. So I started Jiu-Jitsu about 15 or 16 years ago. Honestly, I really had no idea what Jiu-Jitsu was. I had stumbled into a martial arts academy to do some kickboxing to get in shape and started doing that. And there was Jiu-Jitsu offered on the other days. So I started to take that and really realized how great it was for self-defense for one thing, but also I just fell in love with it. I've been training it ever since. The kickboxing has gone away very quickly once I discovered the Jiu-Jitsu. So that's kind of how I got started and just been training ever since.
Was it which school was it? Was it that you walked into first of all?
It was not a Pedro Sauer school at the time. It was a school in Maryland run by Jeff Gordon. And at the time it was under Hoist Gracie. And then he switched to Pedro Sauer for a time, and now he's with another association. So, and his school switched from Pedro Sauer. I moved to a different school that was a Pedro Sauer school in the area. So I train up in Herndon with Pedro Sauer school there.
So how long were you at the Herndon Academy there? How long have you been there?
I've been at the Herndon Academy since about 2009 or 10. So most of my, I don't know, I call it most of my childhood in Jiu-Jitsu. So, but so now a good 10, 11 years around there. So it's a great academy and I really enjoy it. And always ready to go in.
Would you still say you were in your childhood in Jiu-Jitsu? Because everyone always talks about having that white belt mentality. And
yeah. I always feel that way. I feel like I'm learning all the time. And that's one of the things that I love about it. I'm sure you guys have had the same experience, but I love all the classes. I take the beginner classes. I take the open rank classes, anything, and I feel like I'm learning all the time. And it's such a great lifestyle in that regard. It's just awesome.
What was it like that first time stepping onto the mat to do it? Because you're saying you were doing kickboxing. So had you done kickboxing before? So was that like a...
No, the kickboxing, I kind of just thought would be kind of fun to do. I really thought it was like the shadow boxing, kickboxing that you sort of see, in gyms, and discovered really quickly it wasn't. But I did really like it. And I liked the people that I was training with. And with the Jiu-Jitsu, when I started, it was a little overwhelming at first. And I think a lot of, I don't know whether it's that way for guys as well, but for a lot of women, it is that way, it's sort of the claustrophobia of it and the closeness and everything like that. But I really could see the benefits of it and could see how it applied to self-defense situations and things like that. And I just really, really fell in love with the whole art of it and how it works. The leverage is amazing to me. The strategic thinking is really good as well. So, it's just, it's incredible. But, when I first started, I tell this story often. One of the things that happened was, they had a roll and I was rolling with somebody else and they took the mount on me and it was really super claustrophobic and I just tapped and I got up and I was almost sick because it was so overwhelming. And then after that, I started to realize how to get comfortable in that situation and to work with it and be able to think and work my way through those kinds of situations. So, it's amazing how it changes you. And I find it very transformative. And, I was older when I started than I guess a lot of people are. So I started at 44, 45, and, it's been a great activity for me. People I've met have been fabulous. I love the Pedro Sauer schools. I think that they're just all really top notch, and it's a wonderful culture to be in.
That must have been, you must have been quite brave going in back then as well, because I don't know what it was like over in the States, but here 15 years ago, not that well known what, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was, or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, or, not many schools around and stuff.
Yeah, it was very different. And, back in those days, there were very few women that actually did it. And so, we were always thrilled when another woman would come in, we'd try to convince them to stay as best we could. But, not that the guys were not nice or anything like that. It was just, it's a different thing when you come into an environment that is almost all men, and, you're kind of, all right, how do I fit into this and how do I work with it? And those are some of the barriers, I think, for women to do it. Is, as you say, it's become much more familiar. And there are so many women out there that are doing some great things with it in sports, as well as, all of us that have been doing it have been getting it out there. And I think a lot of women have been seeing the value of it. So we're, trying to take away those barriers to convince women to come in and actually give it a shot. It was surprising to me. I just never really pegged myself as a, martial artist kind of person. But, doing this, I was kind of talking to somebody about it, and I was like, oh yeah, no, I don't do martial arts. I do jujitsu. And they were like, no, you've been doing martial arts for 16 years now. I don't think you can say that anymore. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. But it's, I just, as I said, I got so much encouragement, and particularly from Master Sauer himself. I was really super lucky that the school that I've trained in for so long is been owned directly by him, and he teaches at it often. So he was just super in kind of keeping me going and encouraging me. And, is that way, I think, with all his students, but I really appreciated it. And I appreciated the culture that he puts forth in all of his schools. So that was really good for me and really helpful. But it was definitely weird. And sometimes, and, people would be very surprised that I was doing this. And, sometimes I would show up for tournaments, and, you go to the registration desk, and I'd walk up there, and they go, okay, and where's the child that you're going to register? And I'd be like, no, I'm registering. I'm a blue belt. And they were like, oh, okay. They were so surprised, but it was still a lot of fun. And, I met some great people that helped me learn how to study this art and be a good student. And that really, really helped as well. So, a lot of support. And I think that that's one of the things you get a lot from the whole community, is that trust and support that builds. It's really kind of nice. But we also did some things like, I really tried hard to make sure when other women came into the school that they felt welcomed and that they knew where things were. And, usually you'd meet people in the dressing room and kind of introduce yourself and, make sure. And even now I have women that I'll text and say, are you coming to class? And, I'm looking forward to seeing you, and try to make sure that they know that they're welcome, and that there's a group that they can work with. So those are some of my goals. I'd love to see more women experience this this art, and how it can really transform and change your life.
Do you think, what was the you were saying, sort of trying to get rid of the barriers as well for women to find it easier to get onto the mat. What do you think are kind of the, obviously jiu-jitsu is a close art,
Yeah.
but what do you think are some of the barriers, especially for like other school owners and stuff, that they could help break down easily, like not quick fixes?
Yeah, I think one thing that really helps is, for women, a lot of women, they might come to self-defense classes before they come to other types of classes. So having those and offering those is really good. Having women that are teaching or in sort of leadership roles of some kind is really helpful as well. But even if you don't have women that are at that level, just that they build that kind of camaraderie, so that they feel like there's other people like them on the mat, But a couple of other barriers I know for a lot of women, it can sound really strange, but they're just very self-conscious. And, and that's one of the reasons why I really do like having a women's only class that's taught by a woman, is that it kind of reduces that feeling of self-consciousness. And it's self-conscious for different reasons. Teenage girls in particular can be very self-conscious about themselves, and it just kind of removes that feeling of, I don't know quite how this all works. I think that another thing that I found really interesting that seemed to be a barrier for a lot of women, not so much for me, but some other women, is just wearing a gi can be a little over, that's like a formal step into this sort of martial art world. And they're like, I'm not a fighter, but I'm here and I'm interested, so just to kind of, in the class that I teach right now, which is really focused on self-defense, we don't wear gis, I just kind of work at making them feel really comfortable. Having someone that can show them the ropes and kind of educate them as to what's expected or not expected. I think for some women, it's kind of overwhelming to just roll with anybody or just work with anybody. And I always try to reassure the women that I work with that, any technique that I'm showing, if they're not comfortable with that idea yet, they can watch it and wait. Usually they'll come in and do it, but just giving them that control of saying, I'm not sure yet, can be helpful, because it is such a close contact kind of thing. Another thing that I do is, in the class that I teach, is I really focus a lot on distance management. And we start out first with the idea of distance management of, 2 arms lengths away, that kind of thing. But then I kind of move them into the idea of, if you're very, very close, there's a lot of safety in that grappling position as well. So once they kind of see the benefit of that and kind of see the differences, it usually works pretty quickly. And you can see the ones that are really taking to it, their eyes just start lighting up with what they see and everything they do, and show a couple of tricks, and and you're off to the races, But try to make it enjoyable, fun, kind of. I try to make it a little less formal than maybe some classes are, that they feel just kind of relaxed, which I think is really important to learning anyway, is just to be a little relaxed and not tense or nervous, So those are some things that I think you can do, to help out. I know, like our school in Florida, we have about a third of our students are women. All of them take the co-ed class. We do have a women's only class that's self-defense oriented and stuff, but only a few take that actually. And most of them do take the co-ed classes, because I think they start to sort of filter in and feel comfortable. So it can be a good way for women to get involved. And there are other schools that have, quite a large number of women, like half, which I think is great. And that's certainly a goal for my school, and I hope for other schools as well. But
goal for everybody.
Very cool. Another thing I think that's always good is, a nice changing room is really good. a good place. I've been to some schools, and not in our association actually, and this was super many years ago, but I came in for a seminar and was kind of looking around for the place to change, and there was the men's locker room, and they were like, okay, well, you can use this room. And they were literally taking coats out of a closet for me to change into, which was okay. I mean, because I was fine with it. But, I was thinking if you're coming in for the first time, that's a little uncomfortable. So those kinds of things I think appeal, besides just a really positive culture. And as I said, for my classes, I really work on making sure it's extremely positive for them and empowering. So I think that those are some benefits they can start to see right away.
Find it took, because we kind of had this experience that it took us to have our first female training to attract more females training. And we kind of were consciously kind of talking about that, Robin and I, a lot, was we really need to get the first one. And it actually happened to be Bill's sister, Caroline, who's watching live, I think, as well on YouTube. So, hey, Caroline. That then created a spiral after that meant that we did. And then it meant that we had, in pretty much any class that you turned up to, there would be a woman training in that class. So that meant that any woman coming in already saw that it was possible, kind of thing. Did you find that? I mean, obviously with you being an instructor as well, that kind of helps, I guess, as well.
It really does. And I think that does make a difference. And, it's, and some women are very comfortable training with men right away and don't have a problem with it. Some women are a little, as I said, more self-conscious about it. So it's nice to have that option when it's available. But I do agree with you. I think once you start to pull in a group, it kind of feeds itself, and that can be really helpful and positive as well. And they get excited about it and ready to go, just like everybody else.
I need to go back to it because I'm fascinated with one of the things you said earlier about the competition that you turned up to, and they were looking for the child. Who are you competing against? If they weren't expecting you to compete, were there other ladies that you were competing with, or?
There were some other ladies, and on some occasions, and sometimes there were and sometimes there weren't. So it would just kind of depend. So a lot of times I would go and there would never be anyone to compete against. But I think it was partly my age, because I'm kind of like a mom, I am a mom. But I think it was also just, maybe just not that many women that were there, and, they just weren't really sure, and I think it was just general surprise. I didn't really take it personally. I kind of thought it was funny, but But one of the things that I did do was, for a while, is I switched over to, I also took Judo for quite a while, and I switched over to competing in Judo just because of that situation. There were more often women competing in Judo, so I was actually assured to get a match of some sort. And with the Jujutsu, sometimes, because I only did local stuff, I didn't do any high level competing. It just kind of depended on who was there, and it was just a few people. I have seen now women that do compete regularly. They'll send out messages to see who else is competing in their rackets or encourage other women. Facebook has been tremendous, I think, for women in Jiu-Jitsu, because they can kind of communicate in groups across that and see and encourage each other. And I have a group that I do, and to kind of celebrate what women are doing. And I know that there are, other groups as well that I'm a member of that do the same thing. And a lot of schools start to host women's open mats, and so there's sort of that regional community that gets together, and you start to meet each other and stuff like that. But so that can be really helpful as well. So
one of the things we always say with the guys training with each other, leave the ego at the door, and you do your best learning when there's no ego involved. But something that Kristen said to us last week, she said that when the ladies train together, sometimes that the competition between ladies can get really quite fierce.
Oh yeah, Oh, yes. And particularly if you're like, and I was lucky because when I moved over to Herndon, Kristen was there and we could train together and learn from each other and stuff like that. And it was always great because she's just awesome. But it can get really intense. And particularly if you come from two different schools, and you almost feel like everybody's watching you because you're the only two there and everybody wants to see how you do against somebody else. And I don't know. I never really actually liked it. I was like, when I'm ready to compete, I'd like to do it in a competition, not in class while I'm training. And, that's one of the things I've always loved about Master Sauer's schools is that idea of you're not competing against your training partners at school. You're actually learning from each other. And this is a learning environment, or he'll call it a laboratory sometimes. It's not about, dominating on the mat. And that was super helpful to me as a student, going through all that, time after time. And I always try to really push that. I do, when I roll with people now, I generally ask them what they want to work on and try to feed them that, or, if they're not sure, we can kind of go back and forth. But I always let somebody try to work whatever it is they want to work first. And, then we can talk about it and move from there. And I've had some wonderful people that I've trained with that do the same thing for me. So it's super helpful. And, I really enjoy that collaborative side of things and, try to get away from that competition side of things. But I agree with you. I think Kristen and I both have experienced that where it's like, yeah, like, do we really have to deal with this right now? It's like, I really want to learn right now. I don't want that performance pressure, but, so.
Completely.
But you can. It's fun though because you can meet so many people and the women, as I said, since we're a smaller group, we kind of tend to reach out to each other over Facebook or different situations, or when we come in for regional training or things like that, we try to stay in touch, and it's kind of a nice thing. But so those are some things that can really help with women training in the schools.
What made you, I'm interested in this from anybody, it doesn't matter whether it's male or female, but
Sure.
when was that sort of first thing that you thought, I want to compete, I'm going to compete, I'm going to step on there and step in front of everyone and put it all sort of all out there for everyone to see?
Well, yeah, I think there were a couple of things. I was curious, to see how I would do. I think, I'd been training I didn't start competing till I was a blue belt, which I think was kind of a mistake. I think if I'd started earlier, I would have even liked it more, but I just kind of wanted to see how it worked and how it would be and, experience that. But I also did have a woman I had been talking to from another school, and she had said to me that she competed at least once a year. And I asked her why, and because she said, I really don't like to compete, but I do it once a year. And I said, why? And she said, well, that's the closest I can come to some kind of altercation that I might have out in the world. And it, to deal with that, sort of paralyzing fear that you have. And so that I think was kind of a more serious reason for me wanting to compete. But, as I said, I didn't do it for super long. I did it while I was a blue belt and kind of moved on from that afterwards. But, it was definitely really a lot of fun and very helpful for me. And the same with the judo. I competed in judo a little bit longer and really found it super helpful. And I just enjoyed it. I was a competitive swimmer when I was a kid, so I think that there was a little bit of that in me that just likes to compete.
Yeah, he fully understands that one.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little bit competitive. Actually, to be fair, Jiu-Jitsu is the one thing where I'm less competitive than actually everywhere else. And I have competed, and I've, a reasonable amount. I've competed in judo as well. That was where I started before Jiu-Jitsu was judo. So yeah, competed in that as well. And then it was fun to train judo and go to other academies having done jiu-jitsu. So that was
I was told often by my teacher in judo to not worry so much about the throws, just to somehow get to the ground and choke them. And it's like, okay. so that was helpful. Some of the things that I learned in judo were super helpful in jiu-jitsu too. So, yeah, it was fun. It was definitely a fun time. But I did find after a while, between a job and kids and training and running a school and teaching, that it's a lot of time that I don't have the time right now to prepare for it and continue to do it. So
yeah.
You've had that conversation with yourself, haven't you, Pete?
Yeah, exactly the same thing. That obviously we started the school, and I was competing probably more when did we have the school already when I was competing? I can't remember now. My early days.
Yeah,
so
early doors. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and exactly the same as you. I felt like I was having to be selfish for me to compete, because I get a little bit like that when I want to compete. Is that I want to be, I end up focusing on that and get a bit tunnel visioned on that.
right.
And it meant that I didn't feel like I was learning the breadth of what I could be learning to help students more. And so I kind of made the decision after a while that actually, like you say, job and trying to run the academy and trying to do other things as well, that just, it was too difficult to balance the two, those things out.
It's a wonderful experience, but I think you're right. I mean, there's so much more to jiu-jitsu, and there's so much more that it offers. And I'm trying to sort of organize my thoughts here to think exactly where to go with that. But I know for me, it's just the social side of jiu-jitsu has been super. Right? It's given me a lot of confidence to do things that I didn't have the confidence to do. And even from a self-defense perspective as a woman, before I started jiu-jitsu, I was always kind of slightly afraid, of being in bad situations, and, always thought, well, I can scream really loud, I can maybe kick somebody, and I can maybe run. But I don't really have any other tools to handle that. And now I feel like I have a lot more tools and a better understanding of what's required in the situations. And it gives me a lot more confidence. And that's what I try to impart to a lot of women with self-defense is to empower them to have. I try to give a lot of tools, a lot of information, and some of it is not just jiu-jitsu, but to help them, kind of have that toolbox, there. But I think one of the things that's so great about jiu-jitsu with self-defense is that, it can be something very simple, because there's a lot of situations that women in particular, but I'm sure everyone finds themselves in, that you need to create a little space, or it's a little uncomfortable, but it's not like, I need to elbow and kick the person and, take them to the ground and destroy them. I just need to, to get them off me and to get home safely. And I think that jiu-jitsu has that great ability as a self-defense art you can either be very low key in what you need to do, or you can escalate it up if the situation warrants it. And that's something that I found was missing from a lot of the self-defense kinds of courses that I used. They were or looked at and started thinking about, is they looked a lot at and they handled very well, you're being violently attacked and you need to violently respond, and they did a great job with that, and so does jiu-jitsu. But jiu-jitsu addressed a lot of situations that I think a lot of women experience a lot, where they feel harassed, or they have to make certain things, make their boundaries clear, and it can be very helpful in underscoring that. So that's one of the things I really like about teaching it, is I'll use it to kind of elevate that and show that you can use it in a lot of different ways. And I've used it in that regard myself in some situations, and heard from other women that have done the same.
That's the example we generally give when we're in class, isn't it? It's like that kind of your drunk uncle that's maybe getting a bit friendly.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Or being, just being an arse, basically.
Right.
That doesn't have the same level of response as someone that's trying to like mug you with a knife.
Exactly. And you're going to respond a little differently, and it makes a huge difference. And I know, the other thing about training it and drilling it and everything like that, is you start to create that muscle memory. And so you just kind of respond in a way that's situationally appropriate. And I think that that's really good about it. I know one time I had a guy that wanted to give me a big hug, and I really just didn't want that. And, I think what my brain thought was, I really don't want to be hugged. And what my body did was just to create space and just to push off and step back. And it really surprised the guy. And I looked at him and I said, don't do that. This is, just don't do it. And I don't know if, it would have been the same if he was trying to hug me and I was like, oh, don't do that. It really emphasized what I meant. And, I really just pushed off like you do with the front bear hug defense with master text. As you guys know, I'm really glad that it was at work, and I'm actually really glad that I didn't do the whole front bear hug defense, because I probably would have been fired. But no, it would have been fun to throw him. But my body just kind of reacted in the way that was appropriate. And I think that that's one thing that Jiu-Jitsu does teach really well. So I incorporate a lot of that in what I'm teaching with self-defense.
I'm just trying to think, what is it aisles in a library? Is it aisles that they call the rows? It'd be like, clean up in aisle 5, please.
That's right. Return your book.
This has just occurred to me with you saying that. Do you think it's marrying, so jiu-jitsu for you in that situation kind of married up that what your head was saying with what your body was capable of doing, but only really because you knew that structure from jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I mean, because I don't know if this makes sense, but it was like, I thought it in my head, what I thought in my head was, I don't want this guy to hug me. And my body responded with, okay, he's not going to hug you. And this is what we're going to do. It wasn't like my body said, do the first part of the front bear hug defense and push away and step back and get your base and say, don't do that. That all just kind of came very naturally. And it really kind of surprised me in a way. I mean, I think I was just as surprised as he was in a way, because I just didn't expect that I would react quite that way. But it has given me a lot of confidence. I mean, I know it's kind of a funny story, and it was very low key, but I do think that is one thing that you gain is that confidence and that muscle memory that you develop, and your body will start to react before, it saves you time in a situation. So it's not like, this has happened, now I have to think what to do, and then I have to do it. It is, this has happened and I'm responding right away.
How long have you been training at that point, Kathy, for you to have the confidence, to do that? At what point does that confidence come? Because I think a lot of people start training and there's so many opportunities for them to doubt jiu-jitsu, when they're training in class. But, you've got some real life examples there of where it did work.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was a purple belt at the time. So I guess I'd been training about 7 or 8 years. And I know I sound vague about that. I really didn't pay attention to when I started, and I didn't say, okay, this is the date I started or anything like that. So I'm always a little bit like, okay, when did things happen? Or, it was just sort of your life is going on and you forget. But, and then you look back and you're like, holy cow, I've been doing this for 16 years now. But, and don't intend on stopping for another 40, but, you know, I think for different people at different times, I mean, but I have had stories where one of my students and good friends who taught some of the women's self-defense that we teach when she was overseas in Africa for a job. She was teaching it to some nurses that were there, and she taught the wrist escape, you know, simple wrist escape. Anyway, at some time later, either that day or shortly after, one of her students was walking by a soccer game, and I guess a guy grabbed her by the wrist, and it was, I think, a fairly intense situation. And she did that technique and was able to walk away right away. So, you know, it's hard to say when that confidence comes, but I agree with you. I know, like for me, it was kind of this long period where, you know, I always kind of thought of myself as I'm uncomfortable in certain situations or worried about my safety in certain situations. And then, you know, after a while, there was a confidence of, okay, I feel better now, you know, and I think it can be a little bit longer for some people and maybe shorter for others. But I do think that the fact that you know, I think you can never know what's going to happen in any alteration, I think for any of us, right?
Yeah.
You know, but I think that I feel anyway, as I said, before I started this, I had maybe 3 things to try to get out of a situation and be able to go home safely. Now I feel like I've got a lot more that I can bring to bear to that situation and respond to it. So to me, it's a little bit like magic, but I think that, you know, I don't want to oversell it, but I do think that it really does change how you think and how you work, and, you know, how your body and your mind work together. And you just kind of have a different approach. And to me, that is like one of the most wonderful and empowering things that can be done for women in particular. You know, it's sort of my bent, but I think it's for everyone that there is. I cannot say enough how transformative it can be for a lot of people.
I don't think I think it's almost too much to say that it is like magic. It is like, you know, that it is, because I don't think it's really hard to describe, isn't it? But sort of, you mentioned it, that you sort of went in, did a bit of kickboxing, and then was like, oh, actually, no, this jiu-jitsu thing. And to be fair, kind of the same thing. Like, you know, Robin probably goes back and does some of the other stuff a bit more, but I was doing judo, Thai boxing, kickboxing, sambo, and then I started doing judo and jiu-jitsu, and I started going, okay, forget all that stuff. I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I got, you know, just immobilized by a black belt on my first ever class, and I thought, I'm a brown belt in judo, I'll be fine, I'll survive. And I really didn't survive. You know, and just that thing that everyone says, that that first experience of jiu-jitsu where, you know, you're rolling and it got worse. Every time I moved, it got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse. And then I had to tap, and luckily I knew how to tap because of judo. And then I thought, no, that must have been a mistake. I'll go. I must have made a couple of silly mistakes. That's okay. I'll survive this time. No. And, you know, it was like that for an hour. And then I was like,
oh, years.
Yeah. And then it was like, well, if someone can do that to me that easily, how can I not learn that?
Right.
No? I thought I was safe. I was quite a good, you know, not a great kickboxer, but I could kickbox, and I could, you know, I thought I could strike, and I could, you know, throw, and I thought I'll be fine. Wrong.
Yeah, I really loved it. You know, and I know a lot of people that continue to train in a lot of different disciplines, and I am really impressed with that. But I just felt like I had to really narrow in. And the other thing that I did for a long time was Krav Maga, and which was a lot of fun too, and really good for me in a lot of ways. But one of the things I started noticing was after, you know, through a course of time in it, that, you know, we get to the ground portion of it, and the things that I was learning in Jujutsu, I was sort of incorporating in the groundwork of Krav Maga. And, you know, these big guys, you know, I was able to, you know, I wasn't submitting them because they were super big and strong, but I was getting out of things and I was getting away and I was stepping away. And to me, that was a really powerful thing. And, you know, they would laugh because they were like, yeah, you know, try to keep her down on the ground. It's just not going to happen. And, you know, that was kind of fun too. But yeah, I just felt like for me, I really wanted to dig in and focus in on jujitsu and focus on the self-defense aspects of it and what it had to offer. And you know, as time has gone on, it's been my major focus.
I think the fact
And it's
that
just like you, I was interested, I was intrigued, and I was like, you know, you're always learning something, and there's always a challenge, and there's always someone that's got something that you haven't seen quite that way before, and you're learning from them. And I just was fascinated, and so all my extra time goes to learning that.
And the thing that always gets me, Kathy, I don't know if you find the same, but you can never catch up. So you think, oh, there's got to be so much you can learn, and then they'll be the same. But, you know, even those people that are like senior ranks and have been doing it for years and years, and they're still progressing, they're still getting better. And it feels like there's no end to it, which is what is, you know, for somebody that likes to complete a game, I want to complete jiu-jitsu, but it's that challenge. I know it's never going to happen.
Yeah, it is a wonderful, you know, it's, you know, it's just something you do it's a lifelong journey for so many of us. And, you know, I agree with you. I'm always struck by this saying, and I know you guys have heard it often, you know, just to always be a white belt when you step on the mat. And so many people in our association in particular, but throughout jiu-jitsu kind of keep that philosophy. And I always try to remember that myself. Because, you know, I'm always learning something. And, you know, just the other day, it was kind of funny because Master Sauer was up in class and he was showing in the basic class some finer details of the trap and roll or the bump and roll, whichever way you call it. And, you know, he was doing some things that I was like, wow, I'm sure he has shown me this before. I'm sure he's taught me this before, but I never saw it quite in this way. And it just is making a huge difference here. And, you know, that was just an incredible, and, you know, those moments are always there. And I love it, you know.
I'm always amazed at how he still teaches to the fundamentals and the tradition. So it's not like changing moves, but yet he's super innovative inside those fundamental moves. It just blows my mind.
Yeah. And, you know, it's, you know, because I think that there's always that tendency when people do the first year of jiu-jitsu and they get their blue belt and they're like, okay, I've done the fundamental curriculum. I know it. Now what? And you're like, oh, no. We still do. And I always tell people, it's like, I'm a black belt and I still feel like I'm starting on those fundamentals. And, you know, I've gotten really fascinated with the most basic movements we have, you know, standing in base, shrimping, forward roll or backward roll, you know, just these, the teeter totter, and just how applicable they are in different situations. And that to me is just, I'm entranced. You know, so I know everybody's like, you know, I'm fixated on standing in base, but you know, it really is amazing how these very simple, or what we think of as simple moves, can be utilized in so many different ways. And I love the 88 moves that are distilled in our fundamentals. And I think fundamentals is a good way to think of it instead of basic or, you know, the beginner or anything like that, because this is the core of what you do. And I think that that's something that we all got to keep in mind all the time.
I'm sure you do, especially from what you just said, but yeah, every time we go through the rotation and you teach it, and I'll teach it and see something, or I'll do something and go, oh yeah, like kind of not forgotten, or oh, I didn't know that before. Or Robin will teach it and I'll watch it and go, I never thought about that bit of the move like that way before. Or it's just, yeah, it's just even just that is never ending, let alone when you then go blue to purple and then you go, analyzing all of the self-defense moves
or the way they all connect together,
Yeah.
And that's to me, I don't know, for me, I like to keep things simple. And so if I can see the same movement in a series of different situations or positions, then it can help me.
Yeah.
Because it's the same movement. And, but you take that even to a high level, where you have someone like David Porter who will take the Darce choke and he can basically accomplish it from anywhere, because he so fundamentally understands that choke, and of course, Master Sauer is consummate at that. And you see it all the time in what he's doing, it's somehow or another, there's that choke or that arm bar there that where it came from is amazing. But and I think that that's something, that we all love that. And, it's so strategic, as you know.
So what's the Kathy Ortiz signature move then? What do you accomplish from anywhere?
I like a lot of series of things, and I like to think of things in terms of concepts. So as I said, right now, looking at standing in base and ways that you can utilize that from different positions is really interesting to me. But I do really love throws, and I do really like to utilize those a lot in what I'm doing. So I like to start standing. But I don't know. I try to be very, very open to what is being offered while I'm rolling with somebody, and where something will lead and go. I don't know that I have a signature move.
It's for a game of top trumps that I'm thinking of making of all of the Pedro Sauer Black Belts.
That's right. That's right.
Kathy, one thing I wanted to ask you, if I can, is something you mentioned earlier about like all of the different competing kind of commitments and how things get busy. So throughout your training jiu-jitsu, have you been like consistent and regular throughout, or was there ever times where you for other reasons you were dragged away from the mats? And the reason I ask is, we've had some fantastic people that have come, gone, and they kind of like fleet backwards and forwards to jiu-jitsu. And I'd love to be able to tell them some stories or messages of like, don't give up, keep coming back when you can, because you do eventually get there and it does get better.
Yeah, I agree with you. It does get better. I know that I had periods where I was training an awful lot because I was able to. So a lot of times, if I'm not able to get to the mat, it's because I've got some other commitments. But I might miss a week here or there. But I try to make sure that I'm in at least a little bit each week. And I think about it all the time. If I'm not there, I'm thinking about it. I don't know if you guys are obsessed that way, but
I just realized I've asked that question about other people and we've all had a year off the mat. So
yeah, but you thought about it a lot.
Oh yeah. I wonder if it thinks about me too.
And and I missed a good bit as well. And it was kind of an interesting experience in my life to be gone for months on end, because I know that there's several people that do that. And we do have some students, and I know some black belts, because of their work, that, they have to go away for many months at a time and then come back. And, I agree with you. Just keep encouraging them that it is going to get better. One of the things that Master Sauer used to say to me a lot, a whole lot, which might tell you something, is he would say, I would get frustrated with trying to accomplish a technique or learn it, or execute it in rolling. And he would say to me, he'd say, don't worry. He'd go, what's hard today will be easy tomorrow.
Mm.
And just that idea of keep showing up, keep coming, keep trying, keep learning. And, I got, I think some people get very frustrated and they expect, like, particularly when you're sort of in those middle years of training, well, I'm a blue belt or I'm a purple belt, so I should be able to do this. And what I found after a lot, because I thought that too, and you're always sort of comparing yourself with people that advance more quickly or more athletic or anything like that. But after a while, what I started to realize was that just didn't really matter. What mattered was to keep coming and to take the pressure off myself to do everything perfectly all the time. And I found once I did that, I ironically got a lot better. So that, and I think that for a lot of people, that's something to think about and to be aware of, is that, giving yourself permission to fail means that you're going to learn something. And I think that is, if you can approach it that way, I haven't lost. I'm not stupid. I'm not, I can't do this, but what can I learn from this? I ended up, getting caught in that armbar again. So what was happening that allowed my arm to get stretched out and in that position? And you can only do that by tapping and tapping a lot. Coincidentally, I also think with tapping, I think it's really good. And I think it's actually really good for women in the sense of you can stop something when you want to. And you can say, all right, we're going to stop. I'm going to take a breather. I'm going to take a break, or maybe I'm going to go work with somebody else or whatever it is. But I can stop this. And I think, getting that, I think tapping is such a great way of somebody having control over a situation. I don't think of tapping as losing. I think of tapping as, all right, I need to stop. I need to figure this out, or I need to start over again and try again. And it's part of the learning process. So, but I think for women, that's particularly good. And it really underscores times in our lives when we need to say to people, back up, you need to back up. I don't need to do this because I thought maybe it was a good idea or whatever. I don't think it is now. So no.
Yeah. We've talked about it a couple of times over the last couple of weeks as well, about that. Dave Porter first mentioned it actually. And then, we talked about it last week, and that idea that as well, that you don't have to roll, and it applies to both sexes. You don't have to roll with someone you don't feel comfortable rolling with, right? And
for sure.
How do you address that specifically or anything when you're teaching classes, or do you?
Yes.
How do you introduce that?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell women. First of all, in my class, a lot of times they come and they have a partner with them, somebody, a friend or whatever, but sometimes not. But I let them know, if you're uncomfortable with a technique that we're teaching, for example, one of the early techniques I'll often teach is, a trap and roll. It's a very powerful move for women. But a lot of women find it very overwhelming. So they might want to wait and watch it. Sometimes I'll kind of convince them to let them do it with me, and kind of pull them in. But I've always encouraged women, if you're in the co-ed classes and you don't want to roll with somebody for whatever reason, you really don't have to. You can just say no. And I've certainly done that myself quite a few times, and not because somebody's a bad person or whatever it is, but it's just, or you may just need a breather for a minute, and that's okay too. That one of the things I try to encourage the women that I work with is this idea that this is self-paced, you do not have to get your blue belt by a year after this. And, you can miss practices if you need to, for whatever reason, you know, life happens, or you're ill, or you got to take care of something else. You know, it's not like a sport where, you know, you have to go to practice Monday and Wednesday so that you can play the game on Saturday. It's more, it's better for you if you can come in more times, and you're going to learn more. But if you can't, then you can still continue to learn, but at a slower pace. And that is okay. There's no like benchmark that you have to meet at a specific time, you know. And, you know, my main goal in life is to continue to do this for a very long time. I started it when I was older. And one of the things I have to really think a lot about is injury. And so I'm very careful in that regard, because you know, if I get injured, it's going to be a long time to heal. So I don't want to get injured. I'm very careful on protecting myself, tapping early, and moving forward with that, because I would like to do this for, you know, another 30, 35 years or so. And so, you know, I have to take that into mind, and, you know, and maybe have a little bit more of a sense of mortality than some of the younger people who train, you know, because nothing can hurt them. You know, I have 4 kids that are in their 20s, so I can kind of, I do understand it. But, you know, I think that that's something to really consider. And that's another thing that I know I keep referring back to Master Sauer a lot, but it's just, you know, he's got such wisdom on these things. And I don't know if you've ever noticed with the way that he teaches, but he always will talk about how to prevent things first, you know, how to avoid, you know, like even if it's you're in someone's guard and you're getting ready to pass guard, you know, how to avoid them getting their feet on your hips and, you know, manipulating you in ways and things like that, or how to avoid getting swept and having that good posture. So you prevent first. And then as you're doing whatever move it is, you're protecting yourself. You know, you're not extending your arms. You're not, you know, giving people an opportunity to choke you. And then at the end, you prevail with it. And so, and this is something I actually use as a tagline for my school and for other things that I do, that you prevent, protect, and then prevail. And then it's straight really from Master Sauer, in the sense that, you know, he's always emphasizing how you protect your wrists and your arms and your neck and your knees and everything else. And, you know, that you should train in a way that you're not going to hurt yourself, so that you can come back and train the next day. And I think that that's a really great message. I didn't mean to go on and on, but to me, that was really super important in finding a home in Jiu-Jitsu, was that kind of mentality.
But not only, I remember him saying as well, not only protect yourself, but I remember him saying once, I think in Iceland, about like training like you're training with your small daughter.
Exactly.
You don't want to hurt your training partners either. You know, you have a responsibility. You can't do jiu-jitsu on your own. So
exactly,
as we found out.
Yeah.
right. It's very challenging. Yeah, it's. I agree with you on that, and that certainly is the other aspect to this, and he does really emphasize that a lot, and I think it goes back to that idea of being collaborative when you're training together, and you're helping each other, and I actually will do that a lot when I roll with people. I'll, you know, usually they realize it, but we'll roll and I'll let them tap me with something. And then we'll roll and I'll catch them in something. And then, you know, we'll go back and forth kind of, because I think that that's a really good way to learn, and it kind of relaxes the situation, so that, you know, it's like, you got to tap. So now you can relax and let's get down to business and really learn something here. Yeah.
Like your move, my move, your move, my move.
Right. Right.
And that's when you start to see the strings start to emerge, right?
Mm-hmm.
How everything
exactly.
Together.
Exactly. So, you know, that's always a lot of fun. And
I do have to say that when Master Sauer talks about training, like you're training with your 6-year-old daughter, I wish someone would tell my 6-year-old daughter not to give me an hate.
I know.
With the small ones, it's the arm out bear hug from the front defense, and they don't just place their forearm on your throat. It's a
That's right. That's right. That's
like,
right.
no striking. Just you just squeeze it in there,
Yeah.
push away. No.
Connection.
Yeah. It's
Be very careful.
the frame, not a throat punch. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a girl in one of my self-defense classes, and she's a teenager, and she was kind of very tentative about some of the moves, and I was trying to encourage her to be a little bit more, you know, it's okay, just go ahead. And she looked and she goes, I just don't want to hurt any of you guys. I was like, thank you. but it's okay. And then, you know, I'm ready for this and it's not going to hurt. So
with the I change gears slightly to the women's self-defense program stuff that you're working on. Do you find, I mean, I said this last week, I found, first of all, with jiu-jitsu, weirdly, that I was okay doing kickboxing and kicking and punching people, but actually simulating something that would break someone's wrist was slightly shocking to me the first time that I saw it. I was like, oh, that's bad. And then I thought, well, hang on a second, you're used to, because I think because of the sport aspect of kickboxing, right? Rather than it being,
right.
Being that's real, that person's pushed you, you've now, you know, potentially, if you needed to, broken their wrist. But do you think, and I think this is a British thing as well, I think people need permission to do that sort of thing. It takes a while for them to get that idea. Do you find that's greater in the women's self-defense program, that maybe that, like you were saying just then, that permission to actually do the move, you know?
Yeah, I think that does take some time. And I agree with you on that. It's just, you know, we're, you know, women, at least culturally, and I'll speak mainly for the United States, though I think it's probably very similar in Britain. You know, we're taught to be very helpful, very nice, make everyone feel comfortable. You know, it just kind of is in the culture. And so the idea of actually, you know, hurting somebody or even invading their space or having someone invade our space is a little bit, you know, overwhelming at first. You have to get used to it. And I think that's the other thing that's kind of nice about it, is that you could, you know, as self-defense, you can say, yeah, I might have to break your wrist, but mainly maybe I just need to twist my wrist and have my base a certain way so that you're letting go of me and I'm being able to create some distance. You know, I don't necessarily, you know, if we'll use standing in base as an example, if I'm sitting somewhere and someone's approaching me, standing up in base is a good thing to do, because then we're sort of on a more equal playing ground and I can manage the distance a little bit better. I can just simply stand in base when somebody's very, very far away, or I could kick them in the knee while I'm standing in base if they're closer and I need them to step back. So I've got, you know, and there's more that you can do with that as well down the road, but that make it even more explosive or violent. But it does take a little bit of time for women to get used to that and to give themselves permissions really to protect themselves. You know, one of the things that I always ask, particularly older women, is, you know, if you're a mom and your child is threatened, what will you do? And, you know, the overwhelming response is anything. I will do anything to protect my child, but not necessarily yourself. And I think that you have to kind of train your mind and learn to say, no, I have a right to protect myself as well. Just like I would protect somebody I really care about. And I'm sure men feel this way too, but you know, it is always surprising to me. But yeah, that it does take a little bit of getting used to. You know, we focus in self-defense on this idea that you're not fighting. You know, we're not going in the ring to have a fight. That's not what the object of this is. The object is to get away, and to get away as safely as you can, and with as, you know, minimal damage as you can, depending on the situation. So a lot of what I focus on initially, as I said, I'll do a series with standing in base, which starts with people very far away, and then you get closer into situations and actually teach something at the end, which is standing in base from guard. So they can see the application of this one move. Coincidentally, one of the things that women really like about that move, and I don't know if this is a drill you guys have done, but it is really powerful for women, is that when you're standing in base, if you have somebody lean on your shoulder, how you can still stand in base, even though they're trying to hold you down. And I think that's something that's for me, it convinces a lot of women that I work with how effective this is. And in particular, when they're trying to hold me down and they can't, because they're really trying. Or the same with the wrist grab, not only just doing the move and escaping it themselves, but actually trying to do it to somebody else. And, I'm like, just really hold my wrist. Just don't let go. And, they're always kind of impressed with that, so it can be really effective to show them, the efficacy of what they're doing. I'm not sure if I really answered your question.
No, it does. Yeah, no, it does. And I was it's interesting. It's come up a couple of times now that people having to give themselves that permission to protect themselves and that sovereignty over your own space and body and being, and coming around to that idea that you actually know you do have a right to that.
And that you're worth defending, right?
Yeah, that you're worth defending. And that weird cultural thing that's slipped in that I don't know how it sort of occurred, but that's not always the case.
Right. Or that someone else is, going to defend you, I guess, would be part of that kind of idea, which maybe I'm dating myself for an older generation, but I think that, practicing, and I actually watched the interview you guys did with Kristen last week, which was great. And she was so articulate, had so many great things to say. But one of the things that really struck me was that idea of, when you're walking, to walk with confidence, but to also say no to people if they start to approach you, no, thank you. That takes some time. That's something that we actually practice in class. And I give it to them as homework to practice as well. Back in the day, and right now you can't really do it because things are shut down, but I don't know, in America we have in malls a lot, those sort of the center aisle of the mall would be where people would sell a lot of things, and the salespeople can be very aggressive in trying to get your attention. And so that's a great exercise, because it's a very low stakes kind of situation. But if you can walk through and say no thank you and keep walking, because if you stop, even if you say no thank you, they're gonna try to get you to buy something. But if you can just keep walking and say no thank you, it can help you practice that, But it's funny, that's one of the things with I have two daughters. I have two daughters and two sons. So I get to teach both some different things. But with the daughters, a lot of what we would do at home is practice how to say no to people, like how to say no if somebody's asking you out and you don't want to go out with them, that kind of thing. It's not an easy situation to be in socially for a lot of women, and they feel very uncomfortable. They feel bad, you shouldn't. An elevator opens and you don't have a good feeling about the person inside the elevator. You shouldn't feel bad to just say, nope, and walk away. I mean, why? Why do you feel, like that's a bad thing to do, So those kind of things are sort of social things that you need to practice. Situational awareness, again, a lot of times people will say that. They'll say, yeah, self-defense is 99% or 95% or whatever it is, situational awareness. So you should always be situationally aware. And I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? How do you practice that? And how do you practice it in situations that aren't dangerous, So, I've done a lot of research on it and found a lot of good support for it. But one of the things that you can do is, take a walk in the day, on a pretty day and notice the things around you, or, if you're artistic, draw things, anything that kind of connects you to where you can sort of sense how you're responding to things can be really helpful for heightening that sense of situational awareness that we all have, or that instinct that we have that something's not quite right.
Yeah.
Which is a good gut feeling to follow at all times.
I think what you were saying as well is, trusting that gut. What does it matter if you're wrong, but you take the evasive action?
Yeah.
That you could take anyway. Why wait to be proved correct?
Exactly. And I mean, the thing is, like with jujitsu, and with what we teach, it doesn't mean, I'm in a park, I see someone sort of walking towards me, and it's not like I'm going to leap up and kind of go into fight mode and go, why are you coming now near me? I'm just standing up, and I'm not escalating the situation at all, but I'm prepared, and I'm starting to move, or, be aware or track where somebody is. And, they may just kind of keep on their way, and it's all good, or I may need to exit the situation in the best way I can. Another thing that I teach a lot in my classes early on is posture, which I know sounds weird, but the posture that we learn, but to actually stand in base, a good base in posture, where your back is relaxed, but you kind of do that, engage your core with the pelvis tilt, and have your knees kind of soft so that they don't lock. You can do that at any time while you're outside, and people are not going to be aware of what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's not an aggressive posture or stance. It's just one that is very effective to defend yourself, and to make yourself more difficult to deal with if somebody has ill intention.
I think it's also quite good. We do it with the kids as well, don't we, Pete? And Bill. Sorry, Bill. Well, get the kids to actually, when they're talking, or when someone's having a go at them, to stand in an assertive kind of manner, and not be kind of fiddling with their belt, or looking down and wiggling their arms and stuff. And I think that works for the adults too, isn't it? You look a little bit more, engaged.
Yeah, you do. And there are actually studies on this, not to go too deeply into them, but, they have, law enforcement and a lot of different security specialists have interviewed criminals about what they look for when they're, seeing, or they'll, see films of people walking by or things like that. And that's one thing, is that confident walk, that awareness. So you see somebody, someone that has bad intent, they would like to be invisible as long as possible. They're trying to take control away from you, for whatever reason, and, I think that having that awareness just makes a huge difference in deterring people from approaching you in a way that's not so good. I can recommend, I know you guys are on lockdown, but I don't know if you've heard, I know with the Sarah Everard case going on, if you've heard from people that are concerned or afraid, I can only imagine. But since you're in lockdown, I would actually, being a librarian, I would recommend 2 books. One is,
Get ready.
And I can put them in the chat for you later too. But The New Superpower for Women by Steve Cardian is a really good book. And also The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker is very good. There is some depictions of violence in it. So for younger women, I would say, if, just kind of be aware of that. My daughters read it when they were in high school, and I was perfectly fine with that. So, different people feel different ways, but I do recommend both those books. I find them very valuable and pull a lot of information out of them, but they're super helpful.
I'll find them, and I'll find the Amazon link to put them in the show notes as well for the YouTube channel, and for it goes on iTunes and stuff. So I'll put those down.
was going to ask you, Kathy, I think, we're experiencing it. I mentioned it last week to Kristen, but, it doesn't, women getting attacked tends to not be a story that makes it to mainstream media very often. And you only get the really bad scenarios that tend to make it there. And when they do, tends to create a bit of a media frenzy. But I get the impression in America that it's a little bit more kind of like mainstream. I think that gets a bit more press. And I think, the marketing from the Gracie Academy, stay safe, protect yourself, defend yourself. You see a lot of videos from martial arts schools, people jumping out from behind cars and abducting people. Do you find that people that come, or females that come to your jiu-jitsu school, they're doing it of their own accord, or is it because dad wants me to before I go to college, or what's the split?
Yeah, I mean, I will typically offer something in the summer specifically for girls that are going to college, because there's some specific situations for that. And as you know, it can be a real dangerous time for many young women. So it's nice to give them some knowledge, some information, some tools that they might consider using. I don't want to ever sound like I'm saying, well, you should do this, or or somebody should have done this or whatever, because that's not the situation. I mean, what I'm really focused on is, here's some things to consider, here's some ways to be that might be helpful to you, and take it and run with it, and be aware that these are situations that you could come across. So there is that where you'll find some women have come in because their dad or their boyfriend or their husband or whoever has encouraged them to go to college, or because of maybe they have a job where they leave into a parking garage late at night or something like that. I think most women experience some kind of feeling of discomfort or fear on a daily basis. And a lot of times they almost tune it out because it's so pervasive. It's like, I just know I can't go running down this path at this time because I'm a woman. My brother can do it, but I can't do it. So you do have some that are encouraged to come in by either friends or family for specific situations like college. You also have a lot of women that come in because there actually are survivors of situations, and they kind of realize that they need something more and they need help, which is wonderful that they're seeking it out, and their bravery is impressive. So you have women come in for a variety of reasons, and I think that that's maybe something else to think about when you do have women come into your school, is you may not know why they're there, and it could be something because they saw it on YouTube and it looked great and looked really interesting and fun, or it could be that they have been in a situation of violence that overwhelmed them at some point, and they're surviving it, and they're taking measures to make sure that they are in a better shape afterwards. And I don't think women should have to talk about that when they come in to train. I mean, it's not something, if somebody wants to share that, they can. And the one thing that I found is that most women that I've talked to have some kind of story, and the ones that really shake me the most are the ones where they're like, well, I've never really had anything happen to me. Oh, but there was this one time that happened at a party or whatever. And it was like, nobody should ever treat you that way or make you feel that way. And, but it's not even considered a story. It was just, this is the way things happen all the time. And I find that really distressing. I know that my sons have a very different perspective on things. And, I try to encourage that as much as I can. And I think that, a culture that encourages us to not have it so people feel unsafe for different reasons is definitely important.
gonna be
Did
a
that
really
answer your question, Bill?
Yeah, it does. It does. And when you were talking, it kind of made me think of something else, which is going to sound really bizarre when I try and explain it now. So bear with me. You mentioned the laboratory type setting of the schools, you know, where we train. But have you ever, like, you know, like some of the self-defense techniques and, I don't know, escaping from under mount, or, you know, have you ever tried them on a mattress? Because
Yeah.
the friction and the fact that you don't get anywhere near as much kind of like mobility when you're on a mattress, it almost like renders some of the moves impossible. And this is no, like, this isn't a favorite pastime of mine. Where it happened for me, I was away, like a weekend away, you know, camping with a bunch of lads, and because they know that I train, they often jump me on occasions, and they try and take the crown, you know.
Yeah.
I'm using this because that's an Alan Manganello story, yeah. But no, and there was one occasion where I was on the bed at the point, and the guy jumped on me, and it really took an awful lot more effort, an awful lot more thought for me to escape that situation. It worked in the end, but it wasn't, you know, if it was my first year of training, I'm sure I would have been bemused, you know, and there would have been lots of things that really put me off and made me doubt it. It came good in the end, but it just made it so much more difficult. I wonder if you ever tailor anything for those situations.
Yeah, I have taught some of the moves that we do, particularly, you know, from the bottom of mount or from guard on a crash pad. That's got a little more give to it, just to give a different feel for that. Or another one, you know, if you're looking at a triangle or some of the different chokes, if you're, you know, your head is right by a wall.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you don't have, you know, it's great to know the techniques to shrimp out and to escape from somebody from guard. But if you've got something behind you, you can't necessarily do that. So, you know, we definitely address some of those. At least I do in some of my classes, a little bit more advanced classes, you know. But I think that those are some really legitimate things. The other thing that I'm sure you guys address this all the time too, is really, really making sure break falls are good and strong, because, you know, it's one thing to break fall on a mat. It's a whole nother thing to break fall on cement or wood floor or something like that. One of the things I've always wanted to do, and I've never really gotten to this point in any of the classes I've taught, but I know some people who do teach this, where they'll actually go outside and teach, you know, and since you're, you know, going to be teaching outside shortly, this might be a good plan. But just so that there's different surfaces that you're dealing with, it can be very different, you know. I always tell people that one of the self-defense moves I've used a lot is break falling, because, you know, you not only learn to protect yourself against other people, but you do learn to protect yourself against yourself. And you know, I've slipped or whatever, and you know, had to break fall pretty dramatically. One time I was at a restaurant, and I will admit I had new shoes on that were kind of slippery, and I guess it was a wood floor, but I mean, my feet just went out from underneath me, and I did a beautiful break fall, you know, and landed. The staff at the restaurant they were really concerned. You know, my kids were embarrassed, and the staff were really concerned. I think we did get a free bottle of wine out of it, but you know, but it's important, you know, because you do learn to protect yourself in those kind of situations. And I find that interesting, Bill, too, that you find yourself in situations where you've got, you know, friends or other people sort of testing you, and surprise attacks.
Always the same two people, just
not Pete.
And that can be that actually can be kind of weird for women too. You know, I've had guys come up to me, you know, really on the mat, fortunately, but you know, and just kind of grab me from behind. And, you know, I've been able to work my way out of it and everything else, but it, you know, it really kind of bothers me when that happens.
I bet that happened to me once as well. Do you remember? Were you there, Bill? Or was that when Pete was there? I just got jumped. I was like,
yeah. And, you know, and for some women, it's even more serious, you know, where they'll, and I'm sure some guys too, actually, where it'll actually trigger something that happened to them in the past. And then they have to kind of work their way out of that emotionally before they can get into class, you know, and really focus it. So I know it's funny and I know it's a lot of fun and I know everybody does well with it, but sometimes it's like, you know, let's think about each other a little bit and not deal that with them.
No, for me it's fun. So fortunately, it doesn't trigger anything for me from my history. But yeah, it took about a year of training before I could deal with my brother-in-law.
Yeah,
he's got the biggest hands, his muscles on muscles, and yeah, he could just do anything to me. I had no answers. But now he grabs me, and as soon as he grabs me, he starts to panic. He's like, I don't know what you're going to do next.
Right.
I can't do anything. And that, for me, was like the validation that I needed, that it was working. That,
yeah.
You know, and the best thing for me as well was that, and it's a lesson you learn fast, is that there isn't an immediate escape always. Actually, it's just staying calm, because he's going to wear himself out. But nothing bad's happening to me, you know, and it's never going to be terrible.
Just protect yourself.
Yeah, but it's
a little straw.
Yeah, it's great. It's great practice, actually. You know, never knowing when you're going to get jumped next by your family member.
By a family member, yeah.
Little boys as well now, Kathy. It's not going to be long before they start doing the same to me as well, I'm sure.
Yeah. It can always be interesting. You know, people are very intrigued with what it is that we do, and you know, and they're always intrigued to see. You know, I guess I kind of feel like it's, you know, for two things. One is that I think it's been proven so many times how effective jiu-jitsu is, that we see it all the time. We see it in MMA fights. We see it, you know, through that long history and so forth. But also for me as a woman, you know, I see that it works a lot when I'm in class training with people, and, you know, of all different sizes, and I can just see the, you know, it's, you know, I know that they're going to come at me with something, you know.
You mentioned,
particularly now.
It happened to you sometimes, you know, on occasions in class, you know, with consent. Is it something that you would advocate, or would you say, you know, just stay away from completely?
Well, I think that, you know, like somebody coming out and surprising you with a move, I think that you can drill it in certain ways to make sure that, you know, somebody's okay with it. A really great way to do this, and I actually got this from Krav Maga, is to have someone, you know, standing in the middle with their eyes closed, and someone comes over, says their name, and presents with whatever technique it is, and they have to respond. And you can do it really quickly. And I think that that's actually a really great drill to do. You know, so I kind of like that. You know, but you know, I think that you have to know your friends, and you have to know that it's okay. I certainly wouldn't just decide to surprise somebody with it. And as I said, I've had that happen to me, and you know, as I said, one guy grabbed me with a rear naked choke, and I flipped him over, and he kind of looked at me and he goes, I didn't think you would throw me. And I said, well, what did you think? This is the technique. And he goes, I just thought you'd do this bit and it would be okay. And I was like, well, why did you think that? It's like, you know, so it was kind of surprising, because I think he was surprised as well as I was surprised, but it all worked out. You know, I don't know. I'm more of an advocate of let's create a drill where we can simulate that surprise than to just surprise somebody.
You know, that moment, I don't know, when you do the fundamentals classes and the foundation classes, you know, they're fantastic, but it's very orchestrated. This is a technique we're doing. This is what you know. So people come to the classes very, you know, very, you know, structured. I think, you know, when you go to the advanced class for the first time, so maybe you've got your nice new blue belt on and you arrive, and then all of a sudden it's like warm up doing, you know, you might say warm up doing some guard passing techniques. It's like, you're not going to show me what that is first, or you know, that kind of like look of fear on the face. I love it. I think it's brilliant. But the best warm ups is that, you know, that one person in the middle. You know, just take turns and do something to that person, and we want to see how you respond with the right self-defense technique. Again, it's that look of like panic and fear, you know, but this is not the 5 that I had to demonstrate in my test, you know. It's like, it could be anything. What do I do? Yeah. I think it's a really powerful way of reminding people the importance of doing those fundamental classes and making sure that they are, you know, second nature. I think I like it in a strange way.
That really helps. I agree with you. I think it is important to always practice from the master text a lot for the stand-up moves, and to not get so distracted with some of the other things, but to make sure that you always have time for that. One of the things that we do down at our school in Florida that my partner developed is it's a drill that he calls Around the World, and it's a warm-up drill where it's basically the master text, and you start with different moves in front, and you move around the side and around the back, and you learn them as you go. And we actually do that with all of our classes, not just the advanced class. And it helps to get that muscle memory. And then we can add in drills like that where you're just trying to figure out what the self-defense drill is. Or one of the things I'll do in the women's classes a lot is a sequence where, you know, you'll do maybe the punch block defense with the throw, and then the other person will take them out, and you'll do the trap and roll, and, you know, that kind of, you know, back and forth to get that idea of a progression and drilling really as well. Build up to it, you know, but but yeah, I think it can be very effective, and I love the idea of somebody, you know, trying just whatever people bring up to them, and you can control it depending on, you know, the level of advancement the student has, you know, so it can be, you know, they know these 3 techniques or whatever it is, so it's going to be one of those 3, or okay, you know, 10 techniques, so we'll add in some more.
It's interesting, like this whole and obviously you were saying, you know, you're mentioning it and being aware of it, this whole focus and spotlight that's been put on women's safety recently, which is good. It's sort of the things that you've been describing as well might be things that people listening hadn't even thought of as something that would make someone uncomfortable, which is really good. And I find I get blindsided the other way around, in that because I pretty much grew up in a household full of women, I wouldn't dream of doing that to someone, or I wouldn't, you know, invade that space, or I wouldn't I'm almost preconditioned to it, which means that probably I'm blindsided by people that do think like that, because I don't think like that.
Far off your compass.
Yeah, it's so far off my compass. I'm like, do people really behave like that? So I kind of have the sort of weird side. So it's been good for me over the last couple of weeks being able to reflect, to watch other people's behavior more than my own, because I know I've got mine sort of hopefully balanced in the right direction. So it's allowed me to, a bit like the self-defense awareness, be aware of what's going on. So actually, am I more in a position to say, hey, dude, don't do that, like, you know, leave it, you know, give us some space, or, you know, whatever it is. But it's been interesting that it's been highlighted recently for that stuff.
And I agree with you. I think advocating for other people that are maybe uncomfortable is always an amazing thing to do. And, you know, as you say, sometimes people don't realize that they're making other people feel uncomfortable. They're just sort of, it never occurred to them, you know, that this could be an issue or a problem for somebody. You know, so kind of helping to make people aware and think about that it can be really helpful.
The thing that hit home for me in the last couple of weeks, you know, it's not just behaviors as in body language, it's words that people use as well. And I think that, you know, you can have such a damaging effect, you know, just the words and the phrases that you use. And I think, you know, we do have a responsibility to make sure different situations are safe and welcoming. But utmost for us, based on what we're talking about, the Jiu-Jitsu school, that should be a place of complete, safety and comfort, and just the words as well, I think is important, as well as the body language and the physical behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, it is a place that should be, and ideally everyone should feel this way, that it's a safe place to do some very unsafe things, or to be uncomfortable with certain things that you're doing, because if you think about it in terms of learning, and Peter, you may know this from judo, if you're super tense and you get thrown and you're fighting that throw with everything you've got, it's usually going to mean your back is going to get very hurt when you hit the ground a lot. And, I know this because I've had that happen to me, but it's, if we don't feel safe when we're practicing jujitsu, your body is going to be tense. Whenever you're not feeling safe, you tense up. I think it's a very natural thing to do. And then you can't really do the move or learn the move, or you could get hurt doing it. And I think the more relaxed we are, I hate to refer to studies again, but they say that one of the best ways to learn something is laughing about it, that you remember it because you're laughing about it. But I think that the more relaxed our bodies are while we're learning these things, the better it is for us to learn. And I think that goes back to that idea of, with fundamentals, it's very structured and, it's very cut and dry. And then you get to the open rank class and, oh, this is a little different. But you've sort of been, your body's been learning in that relaxed way. And that's good. When did you guys all start jiu-jitsu? About what year-ish?
About 10 years ago, I think.
About 10.
Yeah.
8 years for me, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in a lot of ways, a lot has changed. I think that there is more attention on curriculum and development, and less, and I think, again, Master Sauer was really ahead of his time with that, and of course the Gracie University does a really good job with that, and several other associations. But you would go into some schools and it would be like, here's your first day, go roll with Thor, and it would be like, you're terrified, whether you're a woman or a guy, but I think that's changed a lot, and that mentality is not there in most of the major schools and everything like that. And, because that's terrifying, that's scary for anybody. And you can't really learn when you're scared, it's,
I think
it's not gonna be effective.
To build on what you were saying there, Kathy, I think, like physically you can't, you need to be able to relax, but mentally as well with the words. I think if you're in a relaxed state mentally, you're going to absorb more rather than being, all hit up. So,
and you guys all know, you get nervous or you get scared or whatever, your breathing gets shallow, and you can't get enough oxygen in your body, and all kinds of things start to happen that will affect how you move and what you're doing.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, we have.
Go on. Question.
Yeah, go on.
Kathy, sorry, you're a librarian. I'm really intrigued as to how do you file and codex everything, like the techniques and the moves in your head? How do you access them all so quickly? You mentioned concepts earlier.
Yeah, I like to put together things that fit together, because if I can see a move that I can do in several different situations, it kind of helps me. Like framing, for example, you can look for framing while you're standing, or from many positions, whether it's a frame that you're doing in guard or side body or any of those positions. So, I don't know if you've ever had or if you remember your eureka moment with jiu-jitsu. But for me, one of my big, and this is going to sound so silly, but it made a huge difference in how I thought about things. One of my big eureka moments when I first started and I was a blue belt was that guard, being in someone's guard and being on the bottom of the mount were really the same thing. And having someone in your guard or being on the top of the mount was really the same thing. It's just upside down. And that was a huge moment for me. And so I realized that, you know, I was pretty comfortable with sort of attacking people, their arms and legs and necks and everything like that from the top of mount. But from guard, I really wasn't. But once I sort of put the two together, I was like, well, okay, well, what I can do from mount, I can do from guard. And it just made it a lot easier for me. And so that's kind of what I mean by putting concepts together. You know, I try to think very simply, but yeah, I probably put subjects together, like this goes with the base movements, or this goes with the teeter-totter movements, or this goes with framing, and try to look at it that way. Then I don't have to remember as much. So
So like a confession is that I'd kind of a few years ago, Professor Manganello mentioned it specifically in a seminar that he did, didn't he? He said about, okay, this is, you know, it's mount, guard, same. And I kind of, yeah, no, I know that. And it didn't like, and this is only like, what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, probably.
Probably 2 years ago. And it only sank in about 6 months after he'd said it, actually, the application of that. So, yeah, don't feel bad, anyone, about thinking about that, because it only sank into my brain about 2 years ago. I suddenly went, oh, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. He wasn't just saying it.
well, and, you know, and even like, I know, like, I was thinking, Chris, I did some privates with Kristen DeBrucker, and which were great. And she was showing me some things from the bottom of mount. And one of the things she was showing me is having good posture from the bottom of mount to make the person on top of you uncomfortable. Mm. And I was like, this is a really good way to think about this, because I do this when I'm in somebody's guard, but I didn't make the connection to do the same thing there. And it helped me tremendously. Mm. You know, so, you know, I've got to always look back at those things to try to look for those connections so that I can, you know, employ them in many places.
Yeah. Love it.
As soon as I can, I'm going to be practicing posture when I've got somebody in my guard now.
Yeah. It's very interesting to do. And you can see the difference immediately, particularly if they're, you know, if they're in kind of a low mount, so they're a little bit more over your hips. Mm. But you know, if you can kind of roll your hips and engage your core, you can see the shift of their balance right away. Mm. It's really fascinating. I love stuff like that. I can play around with stuff like that for forever, but I have to really give her credit for that, because it really helped me a great deal with that position. Which
my brain has just gone off now constantly. Like, where is that going to be applicable? Where, you know, I'm just thinking,
yeah.
Be the equivalent of Master Sauer when he does a seminar and he never sleeps because he's just thinking Jiu-Jitsu all the way till 4 a.m. or whatever his brain does.
It's amazing. You know, those seminars are so great, and you learn so much from them. And I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but I always feel like if I learn one thing from a seminar, just one thing, and it could be, you know, hold your hand this way as opposed to that way, or whatever it is, it's worth it to me, you know?
Yeah, that's good advice as well, isn't it? We try and tell our guys that you come to a seminar, don't worry about the fact you don't remember everything that you did in that seminar. Like, you know, just one, like you say, one thing that gives you a little, again, like you said earlier, a light bulb moment, or one little thing. And you know, we, like Robin and I, are furiously trying to remember everything and take down notes, because obviously then we can integrate it into what we're teaching.
Absolutely.
But, you guys can chill, but you can just enjoy the seminar.
Drink it in, drink it in, and have a good time, and come away with one or two things, and you're good to go. You know.
Yeah. Even if you're just more inspired about Jiu-Jitsu. You know,
and to see what people can do.
I can't remember much from Luis Heredia's seminar when he was here, mainly because he was strangling me for a lot of it. But I know I enjoyed it. So yeah, it's a win.
Fantastic.
Cool.
I know. We always talk about that. It's like, yeah, it's great. I get to go choke people and be choked. It's a wonderful time. It's my pastime. I feel so much better. I'm relaxed now.
Yeah.
But
People
it's
think we're
true.
weird.
It does, doesn't it? It does relax you. And I have a good friend who does not do jujitsu, but she's really good, and she knows me very well. And she goes, I can tell when you've missed like 3 or 4 days of jujitsu because you get a certain tone in your voice. And she said, and then I can tell if you've gone to a class. She said, I can immediately hear the change in voice. She said, you're just so relaxed. You're so, everything's good. And I think that that's the case. I think it can be really that way for so many people.
Yeah. And there's been a year of people that haven't had that release, right? That are just
yeah
on the edge.
On the edge.
Well, soon, right?
Soon. Yeah.
Soon.
Yeah. It's getting closer all the time, getting closer. So yeah, light at the end of the tunnel, which is very good to see. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Well, and realize too that this is, Jiu-Jitsu is a lifelong thing. So you'll be doing it the rest of your life and you'll get back to it. So.
Yeah, we definitely will. Well, I'm gonna stop us here because otherwise we're going to turn into Rogan and take up about 3 hours of your time. Because
this has been terrific. Thank you.
We can keep going on, and it's been an amazing guest. And you can take the credit for being the person who's had the most stuff going on in the chat whilst you've been on as well.
A few times. It's pages.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pages and pages. I think. Do you know Kim Wagner?
Yes, she's a good friend of mine. Yeah.
There you go. So she's been on there as well and supporting.
Wow, this is amazing. That's incredible. Thank you guys all. I'm glad that she was able to hook on and watch it. I told a few people that I'd be doing it now, so I wasn't really sure how it worked. So I was like, I think you can get onto it, but I'm not sure. I hope you can. But otherwise I'll share it later.
Yeah, no, they've all got on it, and yeah, it's been amazing. It's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed sitting and talking with you guys, and it's just wonderful to do that always, and to talk about what we all so passionately love.
Is there anything you want to talk about? Do you want to sort of, if people were interested in starting jiu-jitsu and they're in the area of your academy and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you 2 spots in the States. If you are in the central area of Florida, in Inverness, Florida, myself and my partner, Chris Holmes, are there and more than welcome to come in. And if you are up in the Washington, D.C. area, One Spirit Martial Arts in Herndon, Virginia is a great place to train. It's where I spend a lot of time training. And don't be afraid to come in if it's just something you're curious about. Give it a shot and see what you think.
Awesome. Yeah. And those 2 books that you mentioned, I'll find those on Amazon. Okay. I'll find a link on the internet for people to put those forward, and I'll put them on my Kindle list as well.
Yeah, they're really good reads. And if you have trouble finding them or anything, just let me know, and I'm sure I can locate a link for you.
Awesome. Yeah, you'll definitely be better at that than me.
No, I'm sure I do the same thing.
So thank you everybody that's been listening along and that's been on the chat. If you're on YouTube, really appreciate your interaction as well. It's really nice to know people are watching live as well. As usual, I'll upload this to all the other usual places. So iTunes and Spotify and Google Podcasts and anywhere else that you get your podcasts. If you want the audio version, if you haven't, can you subscribe, hit the notification bell if it's YouTube, or if it's iTunes or any of those other wonderful things, can you leave a review or give it a star rating or something like that, and just put it on to download for each week, and that really helps us out as well. So thank you very much. I'll cut us off on the live here.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, we will catch you guys next week. We're still in lockdown, so there'll be another one next week.